everyone. Welcome to our newest episode of the Gotham Outsiders, our Batman book club. Holding a mixed drink in every panel, I'm your host, Chris, a Batman obsessive. And with me, faking his death to take pictures at Paris, my co-host.
Hi, everyone. I'm TJ, your Batman acolyte.
But swinging down on her grappling hook, we have another guest this week. It is brilliant academic English teacher and comics editor, Alicia Whitley.
Hello.
Alicia, how do we know you?
So, fun connection here. We just met at, what was it? ALA?
At ALA. Mm-hmm.
I think it was at ALA, and we ended up hanging out at the Milk Bar. Is that where?
Yes, we did.
We ended up sitting outside, and I do recall that there's like a waiter, like there was a guy pushing a bunch of soda up the street that had a terrible accident, and like, not terrible accident. He just like dropped all of his sodas at one time. Yes. I do remember that very clearly.
Yeah, I vividly recall you and Jeremy running to help him while I sat there finishing my milkshake and just feeling like a complete waste of human life.
And we also had noodles that night. We went to a really great restaurant that I cannot remember the name of, but it was.
I also can't remember the name of it, but it was very.
I remember. I remember. It was called Noodles on 11th. I'm pretty sure.
Are you sure?
It was on like the 11th Avenue corner or something like that.
In DC, right?
Yes.
where were we?
That's where we were. Yes.
Absolutely. And you helped TJ out with a very important noodle related situation. Is that right?
Alicia is a mom, and she became my mom for the afternoon and taught me how to eat noodles.
Don't tell my other kids, but you're like one of my favorite children. So.
I knew it.
She also just on the spot, we just thought she would know how to explain the movie Us to us because we'd watched it the night before and were confused, and we were right, and she explained the entire movie to us, and we felt much smarter after the conversation.
Right. So we were like, hey, Alicia, you need to come on this Batman podcast and explain Arkham Asylum to us.
And I'm so excited that you all invited me to do that because, number one, I really love talking about literature. Like, that's kind of why I'm an English teacher. But number two, I hadn't read this one, and I know that it's like a big deal in the Batman.
Yeah. Supposedly
verse. Yeah. Okay, I think maybe you're betraying like how you feel about the text already.
We might have some feelings to get into, but before we do, what is your relationship to Batman in general? Do you have any backstory?
As a kid, I really liked reading my dad's older comics. And so like I was a Teen Titans fan, like in the 90s. And most of the Teen Titans stuff that I had was like older than that. So I read like almost all the Teen Titans stuff. So almost all of my Batman knowledge outside of watching the television show, Clearly with Eartha Kitt.
Yes.
Of course I watched that. And aside from watching the cartoons, the one with Diedrich Bader, I think, is as the Batman.
Yes.
Very like 50s futuristic vibe going on there. Very Art Deco-y. Other than that, I didn't really know that much about like the Batman. I did read a few detective comics, and in my mind, like the Batman that I like is the one that's a detective with a bunch of like random gadgets and, solving crimes and mysteries. But I'm also like a cozy mystery Law and Order type of like fan. So that's kind of where I come into it.
So this one was none of that.
It was none of that. Like, it was none of that.
Yeah. Yes.
It was.
It couldn't be less that.
I think it was. Yeah, it was not. There was no like cute little mystery to be. I mean, there was a little bit of mystery actually, like a little bit of a found. I don't remember what it's called when you tell a story through like found artifacts and like diary entries and stuff like that.
That's not an epistolary, right?
Yes, I think it is epistolary. I think that's correct.
Do I get points, teacher?
You do. I would say like 10 points to Gryffindor, but I'm on the outs with J.K. Rowling right now.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I go out of my way to find books where the Joker slaps Batman's ass, which might be why we picked this one.
It is funny because our very last episode was the one in which Joker is hugging Batman like the entire time. And in this one, he's slapping his ass. TJ, I am starting to think you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean,
on purpose.
Somehow this one was gayer than Gotham High.
I do like a Joker that, you know, is clearly, you know, just obsessed with Batman in multiple ways.
Yes.
I do like a Joker. Like, I enjoyed Heath Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight. So I like
100%.
I like a really quirky Joker. But the thing is, he's like in an insane asylum, and the Joker is literally the only. Is he the Joker or just Joker? I keep putting an article in front of it.
I also thought it was the Joker.
It is, but I think also Joker. I just all of a sudden my brain rebooted because I realized I didn't know for sure.
Well, now I'm looking at a page and like he's referred to as the Joker and Joker. So
it
really feels like in most circumstances that everybody thinks he's insane, and clearly he's the only sane person. Like,
clearly.
in the whole.
And we will definitely get into the mental health of that because there's a lot. There is a lot. But before we do, so every week we have started doing a competition where TJ competes against our guests to see if he knows more about Batman. You should know TJ has never won.
In my defense,
TJ,
this is only the third time.
TJ, it might be your lucky day because my Batman knowledge is very shallow.
You say that, but last week we had on someone who knew nothing about Batman and they still beat TJ.
It was rigged.
It was not. So we're going to see. So I always start with an easy one, kind of, and then move up to the harder ones.
Okay, I'm ready.
My first one is, so this book that we read today had sort of a whole rogues gallery of villains in it. If you were going to design a Saw-like survival scenario for Batman, which villains would you choose to torment him?
Like, which villains would I pick to him, like, go up against? Like,
yes, to torment him, specifically.
Okay. I mean, I feel like you're going to be like, nope, you're wrong. I know how this works. The Joker doesn't get any more personal for Batman, I don't think. So you said which two villains?
Let's say three.
Three villains? Okay.
Do they have to be like in this story, or can they be any Batman villains?
Any Batman villain.
Okay.
Okay, so I would say Joker, the Court of Owls.
Wait, okay. You just said a whole group of people as if they were one person.
What, you expect me to know the leader of the Court of Owls? Who do you think I am?
You're just gonna say one Court of Owl member.
The Court of Owl. And number 3, I would say Joe, whoever, who killed his parents.
Joe, whoever.
Oh, okay.
He's a villain.
Joe Murderer.
Yeah, he counts, right?
Okay, yes. So I was trying to think of like who would be really annoying to the Batman. I feel like he never really likes Superman that much, so maybe like composite Superman. Because I feel like Superman gets on his nerves.
Chris is on the team that they are best friends. So
I would not be best friends with Superman. I think he would get real annoying like real quick. Okay. A Scarecrow, because Batman likes to be in control, and like Scarecrow, like, I don't know, drugs people. And let me think. Somebody who annoys me. Penguin. He annoys me. So.
Ooh. That would be. To be fair, TJ is right. I do think that Superman and Batman are best friends. / potentially secret lovers. Let's be clear. We didn't establish this, but it's true. But that doesn't mean he doesn't annoy him. So if he teamed up with Penguin and Scarecrow, I could see that. You both gave great answers. Obviously, Alicia wins, though.
What?
I do feel like this game might be a little rigged.
I don't know what you mean. That was clearly an objective question that had an obvious answer. All right, I'll actually give you an objective question this time.
All right, I'm ready.
So, I don't know what your Batman movie knowledge is.
A little bit.
There was a scene in this particular volume which has been almost exactly replicated in one of the movies, and that's specifically the ink blot scene where Batman sees a bat. Do either one of you remember which movie that? Okay, yes.
I know.
Oh,
we're talking live action, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I know for a fact it was in Batman Forever.
That's correct.
Yay! Good job, TJ.
I used to love that movie as a kid. I know he goes in like the little weird black box and he looks into the light and he sees a bat flying at him.
Well, that does happen, but this is a totally different scene. There was a scene where he sees an ink blot test that's hung on the wall of the therapist, and she's like,
okay.
Do you remember that? It's the same movie. You were
right.
still
It's like a theme throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he specifically looks at it and he's like, why do you have a picture of a bat on the wall? And she's like, that's an ink blot test. Which is my favorite moment. All right. So in this book, obviously, the classic Bruce Wayne is the Batman, but the Batman has been many different people over the run of the comics. Can any of you name, and you can name as many as you want, you get a point if you name the most, other people who have been Batman?
Oh, okay. There was that one that happens in the future.
Yes.
And that was in the future.
Yes.
Another kid.
You are correct.
I'm over here rubbing my hands together.
It's another kid. Oh, I wish I could look it up. Okay, Dick Grayson was a Batman, right?
Yes.
Okay, Dick Grayson was a Batman. Was Commissioner Gordon a Batman?
Yes.
Okay.
Good job.
I was like, did I make that up?
No, he had a whole like mecha suit.
Yes. Okay. It was like Iron Man-y because I remember
was.
thinking like, oh, that's funny because Iron Man is like rich billionaire playboy who dresses up. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me see. One of Batman's kid was a Batman.
Uh-huh.
What's his kid's name? What's his kid's name?
TJ's quietly dying.
It starts with a D. I can't remember his kid's name.
Well, I will tell you that you've already beaten me, Alicia, because I only knew that Dick Grayson was Batman because we just recently read Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin, in which that happens.
Uh-huh.
And I had no idea Jim Gordon was a Batman.
There is someone out there who's going to be listening to this, who is yelling at us through the ether of like somebody who's like, ah.
All right, Chris Teller, what's the name?
What's the name?
It's Damian Wayne.
Damian! Ah! It's Damian.
And then Terry McGinnis is the
I really
future
wanted
Batman.
to say, Terry McGinnis. Okay, Terry McGinnis.
Oh, that's
I really wanted to say Derek.
Yeah, Derek Wayne.
But Derek Wayne didn't sound like a person who existed.
Yeah, so TJ.
I remember my brother being obsessed with that show about like future Batman.
Oh, future Batman is good. We've talked about it. It's called Batman Beyond. We love it.
Yes, it was so cute.
I forgot about that.
I can't believe you did either. It's literally your favorite.
And his name is Terry?
His name is Terry.
I just called him Little Batman.
I'm currently sitting under a poster of Batman Beyond, so that's close to my heart. TJ, I want you to know that this was not rigged. I literally gave you a question that I knew you knew 3 answers to, and you still did not get it.
And I only got 1.
So again, Alicia wins.
I don't
Alright.
remember. I honestly don't know how I remembered the Commissioner Gordon one. I think it might be something Jeremy told me in passing, but
That was pretty impressive.
That was
Thanks.
impressive. I didn't think anyone was going to get the Commissioner Gordon one because it was like such a hot minute and such a like bad choice. But here we are. All right, TJ, do you want to take us into the actual book discussion?
Yes, let's go from my nightmare here to my next nightmare in Arkham Asylum.
Before we do, we should mention I don't know how deeply we'll get into it in this particular podcast, but this, if you have a trigger, this comic definitely has it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, like TJ at one point sent me a message and was like, "Oh, I found the trigger warning page," because it had everything on a single page. So, you know, we will be careful with what we're saying, but just be conscious if you have something that might bother you. This might be an episode to skip or a book to skip.
All right, so my first note on this book is 3 words. This is weird.
That's funny because my first note is just, what the fuck?
I'm sensing a trend. Alicia, do you have a similar feeling?
I think if I had to describe this book in like one word, it would be fever dream.
Yeah.
Because I
Yes.
felt like it didn't make sense like ever. Like I read it twice.
I feel like that was the point almost, but sometimes it didn't work for me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, you know, really stood out to me about this book is the art of Dave McKean.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, it's so swooshy and swirly, and like it's really he uses like the mixed media on a lot of the pages, and it just has this interesting effect of being completely disorienting on every single page.
I agree.
So I felt like, and you know, like I felt like there were things that I was missing, but I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be missing them. So I was really glad that I was reading this 15th anniversary edition that has the script in the back, because not only did I read it twice in comic book form, but then I had to go back and read the script. To see,
I also have that edition, but I wasn't committed enough to read the script.
I was reading the new edition that just came out, which as far as I could tell is not different. I was confused. But it also had the script, and like TJ, I did not read the script. I got done this and I pretty much put it away and said never again.
I did look up the ending scene because I wanted to know what was being implied exactly there.
Yeah.
So I do want to read that passage when we get to that part.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of explaining to be done.
The ending scene was like the only one I really liked.
Yeah, I thought the ending was very strong.
I was really into that ending.
I struggled with the dialogue, like the text. It was so tiny.
And it was very difficult to read. And I thought maybe it's just because I'm getting older.
No, it was difficult to read.
But yeah, I was like, I get what you're trying to do with the Joker's text. Like his words are literally creepy and drippy and they look like blood and stuff like that. But there were some points where I literally could not, and that's why I had to read the script, because like the bright red on like some of these bluer backgrounds, it just like pops in a weird way.
Yeah.
I just couldn't figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And then like, of course, Batman is completely in shadow for almost all of it. Like, I think the only place that you see any of his facial features at all is like his teeth occasionally when he grimaces.
Oh yeah.
But it's just completely like everything is half in shadow. And
have either of you read the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman? This
Yes.
reminded me of that. I just tried to read it recently, and I kind of gave up halfway through the first volume, but this gave me a very similar style.
It's the same illustrator, right?
I think it is.
Is it? Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yes, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same illustrator. So good on you for picking that out, that you noticed that.
Yeah.
I'm a pro.
An absolute pro. But he does a lot of work that, you know, incorporates like different kind of forms of art, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like collage-y type of stuff.
Yeah. I liked the idea of that, but the execution of it, especially the first like few pages, I felt like was the opening title of a crime show, you know, when they're doing, right? You know, those crime show beginnings where they're like panning over the murder board and there's like something on the desk. That's what I felt like was happening. I don't know if it worked for me at all.
As much as the beginning dialogue made me laugh, like Batman just saying, "What's up?" to Jim, that made me laugh, as well as him getting on the phone with the Joker and just going, "Joker, what do you want?" Like this is his first time on Zoom or
Joker's
something.
just like, babe.
He's like, "Come here, give you some of that sweet
over.
bat ass."
I just really need to talk. Like, I just feel like I just really need to talk.
Right.
Can you bring Starbucks when you come?
You know, sometimes you just have to like stage a prison riot to see your boo. It just happens.
And then I love how the commish was like, you really don't have to. And Batman's like, but I really do.
I know. Commissioner Gordon's just like, all right, fine. We're just going to sit back and watch whatever this is and not be involved in it.
Yeah, like I'm just surprised that they called him. Like, if the commish really didn't want him to go.
Like,
he barely protests. He's like Willy Wonka in the scene. The wait, stop, don't.
You know what? I love that you used Willy Wonka because there are a lot of moments in this that feel very Wonka-ish.
Right?
But like there's this moment, you know, he like Grant Morrison is quoting like Alice in Wonderland, which people love to do when they're being like, I don't know, super deep.
Yeah, I heard a rumor that you specifically hate that.
I hate that so much because it's not that deep. But you know, there's a moment where he's like singing a little song and everybody's trying to sing it. You know, one of the dads starts to sing along with him. He's like, "There's no earthly way of knowing," and one of the guys is like, "Oh yeah, we're singing a song, I guess," and it just gets weirder and weirder. And that's what this feels like. It feels like
it is. It's the tunnel of hell from Willy Wonka, but a whole graphic novel. You're right.
It's a freak out. Like, I think it's Veruca Salt who says, "What is this, a freak out?" And that's exactly what it is.
It is. You're totally right.
So, like, as much as I was making fun of the dialogue in the beginning, near the very beginning, there was a scene that I actually really loved, and that was when Batman confides in Jim about how he feels about his sanity. And the quote that I really liked was he says, and I'm sure Batman bros have this tattooed on them somewhere, that when he walks through the gates of Arkham, he's afraid it'll feel like coming home.
Yeah.
And like, I know, again, it's like, oh,
it's so
like,
cheesy.
You're trying to be deep, but it worked for me.
It's so funny because my immediate reaction to that scene was I just wanted to Jim to turn into John Mulaney and be like, we don't have time to unpack all of that. We're in the middle of a hostage situation. Could you chill?
It really feels like from the moment that he steps in, it does not feel like our Batman is in any danger. I don't know if you all felt that.
I agree. They were so calm. I was ready. Like I made the joke at the beginning that, you know, the Saw-like scenario that they put forward, which is what Joker implies is about to happen, but nothing does happen.
Right. He just goes from room to room, visiting our cast of characters, and they're all like, and it really doesn't even seem like I mean, I don't know if this is like skipping ahead too far, but by the end of the book, he's like, "Come on, guys. Let's get out of here. This place is the creeps." And they're like, no, I mean, we really like it here. We like being with the creeps. You know?
Yeah. They're just like, living their best lives.
Exactly. It's like, oh, so you had this prison riot for what? Like, it's not even a riot. They're literally just chilling.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the calmest riot. I think that scene where they're implying that he, like, stabbed her in the eye with a pencil and he gets there and she's fine is the whole novel. It's just, like, actually nothing happened.
Yeah, I wish they had focused more on, like, 2 or 3 villains and not done the whole, like... I don't know. I felt, you know how like some shows and stuff do like they have to sell toys, so they'll try to include as many characters as possible. But like, I don't think this had that problem, so I don't know why. It was kind of like a revisiting his greatest hits of villains, like I would have been fine sticking with Joker, Two-Face, and like I thought Killer Croc was a really good part.
Yeah,
that was the only part that actually felt like he might be in a little bit of danger.
right. It's like Killer Croc didn't get the memo that they weren't actually fighting him. It's like,
That's
okay,
true.
let's go.
I did like the one page with him and Scarecrow. Like that genuinely was creepy to me.
Yes.
Like with just like, okay, this book for me worked when it was just art and it was art that like actually told a story. When it was art that was just being weird, I didn't dig that, especially with the weird dialogue.
I agree.
But just art by itself, like that Scarecrow scene, I thought was great.
See, I was gonna bring up the Scarecrow scene. Scarecrow's my favorite of the like main Bat villains, and I felt like it was just kind of like they walked by each other and nodded, like, "Hey, bro," and then moved on. And I was like,
he definitely like lured him into a dark corner, and we don't know what happened. Maybe they just like fist bumped.
they're like, "Dude, what's up? Hey, it's been a while."
Can I borrow that pitchfork?
One of the things that like bothered me, and this is so small, but like when Joker didn't stab that girl's eye out with a pencil, and I think her name is Pearl, right?
Yes.
So it's like pearls everywhere. We get it. She's a pearl. They're pearl handled like knife for the mother. It's pearls. Okay, it's pearls. So he doesn't stab Pearl's eye out, which I was like, totally having seen The Dark Knight, I was like, oh, he's definitely about to slam that head on a table and stab somebody's eyeball out with a pencil. Joker pops up and says, April Fool. I have never said that phrase that way.
So apparently it is April Fool's Day in the book, but I didn't realize that while reading.
Yes, but he says April Fool.
You're right. You are right.
S. Who says it that way?
Is this some kind of weird metaphor that Batman is the fool?
He is the April Fool, I guess.
Is the fool of April.
Yeah. And yeah, they do, you see that it is April Fool's Day. There's a little calendar, next to the commission's phone there.
Yeah.
That says April 1.
I fully missed this, and now I feel more angry. this whole book was nothing.
I feel like if we asked Grant Morrison this question, he'd be like, Batman is the fool of sanity.
Well, of course, like, he welcomes him in and he says, let the Feast of Fools begin. Yeah. And I don't know if you all remember The Hunchback of Notre Dame, like the movie.
I do.
But all I could hear was the song about the Feast of Fools.
I love that. That's amazing.
That movie was, what to talk about, creepy. That movie's got it all. But of course, like as he says, it's the Feast of Fools, and like in the Feast of Fools, the hero is the, fool, and the fool is the hero. Everything is like all reversed and everything. So it's like, oh, I see what you're doing there. Okay, I get it.
How did you guys feel about the Arkham flashback story? Because I genuinely did not give a fuck the entire time.
So that was the only thing about this story that I was interested in up until the end of it.
I want to hear your thoughts on this because I also was interested in it.
So I just felt like it was unneeded. Like I get that we wanted to explore the origins of Arkham Asylum, but it just felt so unrelated to the plot. Like I was more intrigued of seeing Batman go up against these villains. So like part of the problem that we just talked about was that they were so like blink and you'll miss it scenes with these villains. Like if we had taken out the half of the flashbacks, we could have had more page time with those scenes. And I think the story could have benefited from having more time with actually being in there with Batman. But some people probably love the flashback story. But I felt like tying it in at the end with the diary and the other Arkham worker that like found it, to me that felt kind of forced and was just a way to weave in the flashback story into the present narrative. And I was just like, yeah, we could have done without this. Like I was fine with Batman just being in Arkham and confronting his own sanity.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so why did you like it then, Alicia?
Yeah, what's your take?
So, like, I literally was only interested in this background story. I was skipping through all of the villains. Like, I was feeling bad for Harvey because them psychs messed him up. But like I was
Wow.
I was like, what kind of psychiatric program is this? This is insanity. This is
The
insanity.
worst. It's the worst. We'll get to that. I have lots of feelings about the mental health in this book, or the complete lack thereof.
Yes, it's very clear that these people's mental health they're being tortured. But I think domestic horror as a genre is something that I find very interesting. So like the house as like kind of the center of a story plot is like very romantic novel to me. It's like very gothic,
Yes.
And I happen to love all of those like kind of, I don't know, kind of pulpy type of novels about like it's the house itself. It's like, like the fall of the House of Usher. It's like the house itself is representing the decay of the family, and so like
the haunting of Hill House, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. That whole like domestic horror, like the family unit being broken down is represented in this house. So like their house is literally the House of Arkham, being both the family and the physical house of Arkham being reflective of that family. I found interesting. I also was kind of interested in like these flashbacks, like there's all these little references to jokers and clowns and stuff like that.
Right?
Like I think he says like the workman dropped a Joker tarot card or something.
Yeah. For a moment, I was like, what's being implied here?
Like, are we saying that there is something supernatural about this house that is affecting this? Like, is our solution to the problem what's actually causing the problem in the first place? I suppose is kind of how that like comes together. But
yeah, there was a level of, and I know you like murder mysteries, so maybe you'll go with me on this journey. There was an Agatha Christie about the backstory, right? Like there was is there the Arkham ghost? Is he why things are continuing to be bad? But there's never ever a answer. It like strictly refuses to tell us whether.
Absolutely.
And I kind of loved that.
Yes.
Well, and what were the odds that this monster that the Arkham dude saw was a bat and Batman just happened to be a bat? I wanted there to be more to that.
I did too. I'm in agreement with you on that one. I felt like Grant Morrison was like, what if everything a metaphor?
Exactly. What if everything is a symbol and everything is a metaphor?
And I kind of wanted him to calm down just a little bit.
So if you ever get a chance to go back and read through his little notes and his little footnotes, it's like he threw in all of the symbols that his little heart could like just take delight in. I mean, there's the clownfish and the fish being like clowns, but the fish being fools, and the fish also representing Jesus, who is like a sacrificial figure. And at the very beginning it's like there's a book that says the Passion Play and it has a nail in it, and then Batman stabs his own hands and he gives himself kind of like stigmata, I guess, for no reason. And
why?
And then
so
that wound is never mentioned again. And then like just the whole cycle of death and rebirth, and the fact that clownfish are like can change genders if like something happens like to the male clownfish.
I actually want to talk about that, and you said you read this script, so I want to know if there's something to this that I was reading into. He mentions the clownfish and I was like, okay, weird take. But then right away he's like, they change sex when this happens, blah blah blah. And I was like, very specific thing to point out.
Yeah,
right. And he specifically says they do it to replace the one that died. Okay. And he makes a comment that is a fool, like that is a thing that tricks the other fish.
Okay, so then a few scenes after that, his family gets killed, and then in his insanity, his grief, it just says he puts on his mother's wedding dress, and I was like, okay, what is going on with gender here? Like,
it's like
it had to be tied into the clownfish, but I was kind of struggling with it.
I don't know if you noticed what Joker was wearing. Joker's got the long nails going on.
Yep.
Joker's
his bad
got
nails.
He's got his cute little trench.
Yes.
But Joker is also at the very end, like Joker sticks a foot out, and Joker is wearing some of my mother's favorite black pumps.
Right? And he mentions those because he specifically says that Harvey is trying to get like poop on his heels. Like that's a line from early on.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, Harvey's messed in the corner. He's gonna get poop on my heels or something like that. He's gonna mess up my heels.
I love that you're giving him this like 1920s gangster accent.
Right.
Because I feel like he's being very sassy here.
Yes.
There's all of this, and like that's one of the notes that I wrote down is that I get that we are in the madhouse. I get that we are hanging out with criminals right now because this is a home for the criminally insane. He keeps bringing up gender bending or dressing in the gendered clothes of another person as, an expression of insanity. Like this is, it's like these people are crazy.
Okay.
You know how crazy they are? They wear wedding dresses.
Right. See, that didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, this is the weird dynamic of Grant Morrison. So just by virtue of the guests that we've had on so far, this is our second Grant Morrison novel or a graphic novel we're covering. And we've both times had to talk about what on earth is Grant Morrison's deal with gender. And I don't know. It's really hard because on one hand, he writes the Umbrella Academy, or not Umbrella Academy. What am I thinking of, TJ? Doom Patrol. There we go.
Yeah.
He writes Doom Patrol, which has one of the first non-binary characters in a comic, and this is at the same time as this is coming out.
Right. So, and that's the thing. I was like, I was very off-put by this. But then the one doctor, like at the very end, has switched clothing. He's now wearing the dress.
Yes.
And so I was like off put by this. I was like, what is he trying to say? And then I was like, well, the setting is like in this setting. So like literally anything anybody does here is a thing that you're saying people do because he's crazy.
I mean, Alicia, I think you're completely right in that he probably intentionally used the cross-dressing gender issues as like a form of expressing insanity. I mean, this was what, the 80s when this came out?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's
I think
what I'm thinking. But then on the other hand, he kind of posits that like the Batman is the insane one and maybe the Joker is the sane one here. And he puts on, I wanted to talk about that scene.
Yes, please.
Where Arkham puts on the dress after discovering his dead family, right? Isn't that where he puts on the wedding dress to clean them up? Okay, so this note says, this was originally a shamanic cannibal sequence of which only vague hints, suggestions, and shadowy threats remain. And then goes on to say, the original line was, later in the lavatory, choking and sobbing, I bring up the half-digested remains of my family. The cannibal scene was intended to show Arkham reverting to the hardwired primordial behavior patterns as his psyche disintegrates. Early tribal societies often consumed parts of their dead as a way of retaining something of the spiritual essence of the departed. So like he puts on his mother's dress and eats his family and then throws them up.
I was confused as to if he killed them because I don't know. I just got the vibe that he did it. So then when they said it was the other murderer dude, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought he had killed them too.
I did as well.
What like Amityville horror style. And then, on the same page, like inside the script, it says like Clayface is walking up and Clayface is like, I'm so sick, touch me, touch my sickness, or whatever. He says, as with other villains, Clayface is being given a slightly different portrayal than usual. He is seen here as an avatar of filth and corruption, the personification of pestilence and infection, whose impure touch carries instant contagion. Alert readers will perceive him as AIDS on two legs and realize that he represents the fear of what lies beyond this curtain in the tunnel of love. Like, if we take all the encounters with villains as corresponding to various psychological states, then this one is Batman's fear of sexuality as something intrinsically unclean.
Okay, so that is relevant to our last discussion on Grant Morrison, because he has famously said that he reads and writes Batman as gay, but not like able to accept that about himself or actually express that about himself.
Interesting.
Where the exact quote is, he was like, Batman is very, very gay, though of course on page is always written as heterosexual, but come on, he's gay. It's like how the quote goes. So if we see him as reading Batman as queer, but like repressing it,
I guess that's why the Joker would bother him so much. Like the Joker just being like, yeah, bitch, I got heels.
Yes,
yeah,
nails.
My note on the Joker here is he's either super queer or a bro pretending to be queer or a queer bro.
I like the idea of him being a queer bro.
I love that.
Yeah, so maybe I feel like this is the strangest thing that has happened. Before we started this podcast, I thought I liked Grant Morrison. I read these two and I was like, I don't like him. And then after the discussions, I'm like, do I? I'm having a whole like a range of experiences of him, I think.
I like his ideas, but his execution, from what I've read so far, isn't always working for me.
It's messy.
But like I said, I'm a huge fan of his new X-Men run. He like reinvented the X-Men and I love them.
Yeah.
But for Batman, I don't know.
He wrote one of my favorite Batman stories later, because he also wrote Batman Incorporated, which feels like an entirely different writer. So I would just love to talk to Grant Morrison and just have him like explain how his brain works, because I'm confused. So in conclusion, we have no idea what Grant Morrison's saying about gender.
Idea. Because, I was thinking about that as well, like the shorthand for this person is insane, right?
Yes.
Was they are, indecisive.
Right.
They are, gender fluid. They are, and then the other thing is they're rapey.
Oh yes, very.
There was so much pedophilia in this book.
There was so much like, your little girls are threatened by these dudes in dresses. Like it just felt very like,
I'm gonna have to go back to the Mad Hatter character is specifically the one that was like, I hear the screams of little girls, or it was something that,
right.
So I don't remember. I could be wrong, and possibly there are people screaming that I'm wrong that are listening to this, but I don't remember pedophilia being a part of his character at all.
I don't remember that either, but I was thinking, well, I don't remember a lot of Batman, and most of what I read and watched on television was, for kids. So it was mostly like villains who wanted to control the world for some reason and be wealthy and maybe, has a reckless disregard for human life. Like that's the villains that I remember.
Yeah. And this character, so Mad Hatter is always kind of just like a, one-off beginning, like we'll pound him into the ground before we face the real villain type of character. So he's not he's like never there's no like big arcs where Mad Hatter is the main villain. But
like this is just gross.
It's gross.
Like the amount of just gross.
Yeah. To me, there was a very short line from the Joker to Batman, and I forget what the context was, but he's talking about a photo, I believe, and he says something about like a little boy, and he says something like, "Oh, so cute" or something. And
I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. He says, "Is Robin shaving yet?"
Oh.
I'm telling you, there's something else too, though.
I think you're right, but that was the one that stood out to me because he says something before that's kind of like implying pedophilia, and then he's like, Batman, like you, basically. Which
Yeah, there's like one part in this book where he says, and like again, if you are listening to this and this is you and child rape is your trigger, this is like the part to tune out. He says, doors open and close, applauding my flight. Keyholes bleed. A choir of sexually maimed children sings my name over and over again.
Yes. What on earth?
What is happening? Also, did he kill Killer Croc?
I don't know. I was like, okay, I'm following the Killer Croc scene. I'm following it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, where did he go?
Did he get stabbed? Did Killer Croc get stabbed? Somebody's gotten stabbed.
Guys, I found the panel I was referring to with the Joker and my suspected pedophilia.
Yes.
Which, good point with the Robin one. But this one is when he's looking at what was it called? Where Batman sees the bat.
The ink blot test?
Yes, he's looking at it and he's like, "What do you see?" And he says,
Nothing.
"You don't see even a cute little long-legged boy in swimming trunks?"
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "What?"
I forgot about that.
So like there's too much for it to be coincidence. Like
there's a lot.
Now that we're at the point where we're saying we're using gender expression and sexuality to make Joker seem crazy, and then we're throwing in pedophilia, to me that rubs me the wrong way.
He's a real cross-dressing
Can we
molester, I guess.
This feels like a great time to jump into his diagnosis that's given in this book, which is the moment when I almost threw the book across the room.
Was that the diagnosis that, well, he's just developed lots of personalities to cope with the changing world or something like that?
Specifically, so, listeners may remember I'm a therapist in training. So when I read the line, he's not crazy, he's super sane.
Yeah, my note there is, what is this Joker apologism bullshit?
Who is this woman? I was waiting for the twist at the end to be like that
He's crazy too.
Right? Like all the therapists were dead and these were also just patients. Like I was waiting for that to be it, because she's just like she describes him specifically as having a rare form of Tourette's that makes it impossible to filter out sensory information, and to cope with this he reinvents himself every day. Every word of that sentence is nonsense.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, like, I also thought it was ridiculous, especially the first half of that conversation they have. But I did write down where she describes the Joker as creating his personality day to day, and he sees the world as an absurdist stage. I was like, okay, that's actually like a pretty good like description of the Joker, and I bought that, but everything else sounded like bullshit.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tourette's has nothing to do with sensory. Those are not the same thing. What she seemed to be actually describing was some form of autism, which Joker does not have. Let's be clear, but is not even close to Tourette's. Like all of the words did not make sense in any sort of way at all. But I do agree that the idea that he recreates himself every day is an interesting way to explain how every writer writes him different, but in a canon way. Like, because I think she says sometimes he's like a charming prankster and sometimes he's a murderous clown, which is just like Batman canon is a mess, but here's a reason.
That's So I was actually just, just one more like note about how creepy and gross like Mad Hatter and Arkham please. And what's his face, the Mad Dog, I guess was the guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And okay, so Joker, Mad Hatter, Mad Dog, and I feel like there was somebody else who was just like, I love little kids. So I was like looking this up. I was like, is Grant Morrison just obsessed with rape? And apparently he went off about like the prevalence of rape in superhero books. And he says, I pick an issue of Marvel Man Up and there are 2 freaking rapes in it. I'm editing it. And I suddenly think, how many times has somebody been raped in an Alan Moore story? And I couldn't find a single one where someone wasn't raped, except for Tom Strong, which I believe was a pastiche. And we know Alan Moore isn't a misogynist, but frick, he's obsessed with rape. I managed to do 30, and then he says, I managed to do 30 years in comics without any rape.
Okay.
And I was like, wait, hold on. I did just read this story, right? Like
he did 30 years after this? Is that what he
did? Is it just post this, or like is he saying there's a difference between depicting it and not? Because there's definitely a part where like in the script he writes that, you can't quite see what has happened to the bodies, but they have been mutilated and they have been sexually molested. Like it just seems like, really, did you?
Is it maybe he got it all out of his system in one book and then didn't have it in him for the rest of the run? Maybe. Like, good grief. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other Grant Morrison runs and I can't think of any more rape after this, so maybe maybe he did have 30 years, because he's written for a long time. So
Yeah.
maybe there is 30 years where he didn't write it, but he certainly wrote it in every page of this one.
Yeah.
Every page.
Every page.
Can we just talk about the fact that so the doctor like kills the other guy, and
Yes.
she's like, "Oh Christ, I just killed someone," and Batman's like, "Eh."
Yeah, he says he got what he deserved.
He got what he deserved. Yeah.
Yeah, like don't worry about it. And I'm like, wait, isn't Batman's thing like that he doesn't like believe in taking people's lives? Like, isn't that why all of these murderous murderers are in the insane, all these murderous murderers that he was about to just let out?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. There's a line too. It's the doctor, right, that says like, you've been feeding the asylum the whole time, like you just pick the ill and put them here, which is an interesting thought, except that it doesn't actually make sense with any of those characters' backstories, because all of them were bad before Batman.
Right. Yeah. He didn't just go, you're acting abnormally, get in there.
Right.
They are criminally insane here.
Like, to be clear, they've killed like a lot of people, but it's Batman's fault. Okay.
To be devil's advocate, I've heard the argument that like, because Batman exists and he dresses up, that he's influenced these villains to do the same thing.
I have heard that.
So that works usually for Joker, right? Like, that's Joker's whole deal, that he responds to Batman. But the problem is that this story includes...
I'm chaos, Batman. Yeah. I don't know why that's Joker's voice in my mind. No one has ever done Joker that way.
I love it. You need to voice Joker. I don't know in what.
That's how I choose to do the Joker.
Iconic.
It's good. We love it. We're here for it. But the other bad guys, though, the problem being that like most of them existed before he did, right? So it's only Joker that actually is a response to Batman. But Batman dons the cowl because these villains are here. Like, Penguin is here, and Scarecrow was already tormenting people. So it's not like he actually caused all of them. I don't know. It felt like it didn't quite work. So there's a moment, right, where he's able to escape. That's the scene with Ruth, right?
And he goes back in.
Because he has to prove that he's stronger.
I got to get this coin to...
I didn't understand why he, quote, freed them. I didn't understand that.
I have no idea. I literally, when he goes back at it to prove he's stronger, I rolled my eyes so hard, I gave myself a migraine. I was just like, ugh. Okay.
I have toxic masculinity and must show that I am strong.
I know. I was just, and Ruth, who's like one of the few sympathetic people in this whole story, is just like, but you don't have to, though. Like, and I guess we should also mention the ending of Arkham's story, where he murders the murderer of his family. He treats him for years and then murders him and fakes it as an accident so that everyone will still think he's the hero.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, at least that's how I read it.
I mean, I caught that he treats him for years and then murders him.
Right.
I didn't think about I don't want people to think that I'm a bad guy.
There's this little line where he is like, no one suspects it. It's just the kind of thing that happens. And so I can go on.
Right. And he was like congratulated and glorified for treating the man who had killed his family.
Right.
So they like didn't think he killed him, and he got to keep all the praise.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah, that's my deep thought. Just yikes.
But then he goes crazy.
Yeah, so who really escaped?
Who did?
One. Yeah, Batman's like, he's like, get out of here, guys. You're free. And they're like, we've always been free in here.
Yes,
You're the one who's going back to the mad house. There's my Joker again. You're the one that's going back to the madhouse. I don't even know why that keeps happening.
James Cagney as Joker, apparently.
Yeah, the idea that the outside world is the asylum. Like, I thought that was interesting. I don't know if it worked for me 100%, but I got what was trying to be said. And, I think one of the main problems here is that Grant Morrison is trying to be deep and he thinks he's being deep.
Yeah. It's pretentious.
Yes, that's the word.
Yes.
That's the one word that I keep coming back to.
It's very pretentious.
Yes. I did love Harvey's little ability to make a decision.
Yes.
Yes, me too.
Without the coin. That was very nice.
And why do you think he did that?
Here's what I don't know.
Right? So we haven't really talked too much about the whole Harvey treatment, which was to get him to gradually use more and more complicated choice-making mechanisms, but then he like completely falls apart because
Too many choices. Who wants that?
There's an idea in psychology. I'm going to go a full professor here because I just taught this last week, but there's an idea in psychology of the like myth of decision, which is that we think we'll be happier if we have more choices, but we're actually less happy the more choices we have.
So unhappy.
It's miserable. And so he's like falling apart, literally can't do anything, but at the end he is able to do it. So did it work?
That's what I wanted to know. I'm like, so I guess Dr. Ruth wasn't so doing such a bad job, which I think Dr. Ruth was definitely doing a bad job.
But let's be clear. Dr. Ruth is a terrible therapist.
Here's what the script says.
Please.
Lying in his palm, we see the silver dollar, scarred face clearly uppermost. Two-Face smiles a smile intended only for himself, slipping the coin into his breast pocket. At the end, he has transcended destiny and made himself free, if only for this one time in his life. So it kind of ties in to when Batman was like, is it destiny? And supposedly Two-Face somehow got the will to
but why
defy his destiny.
But can we talk about the very, very end?
Yes.
When he looks directly out at you, the reader, and says, who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards. And then sweeps the cards away.
Yes. I don't know why it was so funny to me. The whole ending, I was just like, no.
It's just like, your whole world is just built on a very fragile, thin house of sanity. And I'm going to sweep it all away with,
Like, I like the ending.
Which 2020.
Yeah, that's true. It's relatable.
Like, I feel like Harvey's decision was, like, I like what they did with Harvey there at the end, but it wasn't clear about his motives. And if we had had more clarification, I feel like it would have been more impactful.
Right, because am I wrong, or was Batman surprised that Harvey was in Arkham? Because I felt like he was like, Harvey, what are you doing
I thought he
here?
was just surprised that Harvey was like urinating on the floor.
I mean, fair.
To be fair, Harvey can still get it. I don't care if he's himself or his face is messed up. He was looking good in some of those panels.
I mean, that last one, he was looking like he'd been doing, a nice little like set of burpees ahead of time. Like maybe
he knew Bruce was coming.
Yeah, he was ready. Can we, this is definitely out of order, but I forgot to mention it. Can we talk about the word association game that Ruth plays with Batman?
Where she ends it on purpose because she could see that he was getting out of control.
Well, he's like, in his toxic masculinity, which is on full display in this one, where he's like, I could take it, they're just words. And the first thing she says is mother, and he like bursts into tears. I am fine, mother. Oh no.
Chris, you mentioned toxic masculinity. Where does this fall on your scale of between Frank Miller and
James Tian? So I have established at this point a scale on one end is Frank Miller, the most toxic of masculine writers of Batman, and on the other end is James Tian. Grant Morrison's last one fell right in the middle. I still feel like this falls in the middle. Just Frank Miller just moved that scale so far over that it's hard to reach that level. But because I think sometimes I can't tell if Grant Morrison is commenting on the toxic masculinity or like embracing it, and I don't know ever. I feel
Yeah, I can't tell either. And so maybe it would have been different if we read it in the time it was written. Like maybe
Yeah.
some of what we're seeing is colored by our perspective.
Yeah. I don't know. I can never tell. Again, I think we said this earlier. I don't know what he's saying about gender ever, except that he's always saying something.
Right. Like I felt like he was making an effort to tell something. I just couldn't exactly tell what it was.
I feel like we should not have to refer to the script of a comic book as frequently as we have with this one.
This is true.
And, just from editing comic scripts, I do know that there's a lot that is going into the writer's brain or that's going through the writer's brain when they're writing that doesn't always translate to the page. And so sometimes, it's helpful to have that script and to try and see where they were trying to go with this.
Yes.
But
it feels like he needed an editor.
But like this is, and like we said, this is an iconic Batman story. It's on so many top 10 Batman story lists. Like, do you guys think it holds up? Does it earn its place on that list? And do you see why it is held to that high standard?
I think I see why it's iconic. It's definitely memorable. It's definitely a story that's going to stay with me. It's not going to, it's jarring. It's disturbing. It intends to be jarring and disturbing. So it hits the mark there. So I understand why. I think it seems to have informed a lot of who Batman has become.
Right.
Over the years, and like the questions that keep getting brought up about like, is Batman actually a good guy, or is he a vigilante who likes to play dress up? Is he actually the hero here? I think it does ask some of those questions, but I do have some serious issues with some of the way in which the story is told.
Yeah, I think I feel similarly. Like I'm not upset that I read it at all. Like I think it was interesting. It's one that's worth thinking about. But if we were recommending someone to read something to get into the Batman world, this would never be on my list. And I mean, I wouldn't, until you are in, I would not recommend you reading this one, because I feel like this is a good novel to make you go, I don't want to read this ever again.
I feel like it also requires a little bit of knowledge over who these people are.
Yeah, that's really true.
It's not like whenever I'm like, there's an episode of Doctor Who that I always use to introduce people to Doctor Who, and that's the Blink episode. Every time I every year that I teach freshmen and we talk about suspense and we talk about pacing and we talk about horror, like as a genre, like how all of these things go together to how all of them work together to keep your attention. I use that episode because it's perfectly encapsulated in one episode. And this book is not that. No. It's so dark. It's so confusing. It's so disorienting that if you don't know who the Joker is, if you don't know what Arkham Asylum is, if you don't know, the struggles that Batman has had, like you would not, it would be meaningless.
And sometimes it is anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, because even, I'm the Bat obsessive of the show, and even there were times, because he interprets the characters so differently than they've ever been interpreted, there was definitely a moment when I was like, which villain is this supposed to be? Because they don't look the same, they don't act the same.
Like Clayface, what was up with
Yeah,
that?
I had no idea that was Clayface until you mentioned it just now.
I thought it was some sort of Captain Planet.
Right. I was trying to go through my head. I was like, is there a pestilence villain I'm forgetting? Because that is not Clayface.
It's the AIDS villain, Chris. Didn't you know?
I wrote that it was COVID, but okay.
It just looked like boogers.
He was like, I want to share my disease. He's everyone who doesn't wear a mask.
All right. So, Chris, Alicia, I'm going to ask you both, what was your favorite part of the book, your least favorite part? whether that to you is a certain panel or an aspect you decide. And how many batarangs would you give this book? 1 out of 5.
I think my favorite part, because I find it funny, even though I think maybe I'm not supposed to, so this is probably not fair, but the ink blot scene, to me, it cracked me up so hard, where he looks at it, you see a full bat, and he's like, I see nothing. I don't... It was so Batman, and I don't know. That was the part I was like, yes, I love it. Did you say least favorite part also? Was that what you asked?
Do you have a least favorite part?
Probably all of the pedophilia. That feels like an easy answer, but just like, I could have done without maybe 99% of that. So least favorite, I don't know, most of it, to be honest with you. Alicia, how about you?
I think my favorite part is where Joker's like, you have an hour, go hide.
Yes.
And then I think it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum essentially are like, oh, we're bored and we want to hunt him now. And Joker's like, it's only been 10 minutes. They're like, please. And he's like, oh, all right. It's like he went, oh, that's right. I'm crazy. I forgot. Who has to follow the rules?
That was a great moment. I'm
Fine,
with you on
have
that.
it your way. We'll go hunt him now. I loved that. That was funny. And my least favorite part was the Alice in Wonderland quote.
Yeah.
Maybe it's come to feel very cheap. If the monomyth is the hero crosses into the unknown, like, what is more unknown than Wonderland, So I don't know. I know that there are people who love Wonderland. I just feel like it's creepy and always has been creepy, and it's not edgy to make it creepy. People seem to feel like, we're going to do Alice in Wonderland, but like creepy.
Yeah.
My favorite part was the ones I already mentioned. The very beginning scene with him saying, I'm afraid walking into Arkham is going to feel like home. But then I also really liked those other 2 scenes I mentioned with where the art speaks for itself with the Scarecrow and Killer Croc. I like those a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Least favorite for me is probably the entirety of the flashbacks.
Aww.
We can like it enough for you.
I wanted to know so much more about like who would agree to like do this project. Like, I just wanted to know about his wife. Like, what was her deal?
Yeah, what was her deal? That's
Arkham's like, and also, okay, I know you're wrapping it up, but maybe you can answer this question for me.
Yeah.
When exactly did Arkham's mom die? Because
no idea.
I thought that she had been dead by the time that they were like rebuilding it, but then
he killed her, right? Or did I read that wrong?
She slit, I thought he said she slit her throat with a pearl handled
She slit her throat.
But then at the end, it like goes back to that scene and it shows him with the same thing. So I was confused about that.
I was confused about that.
I have no idea.
Okay, I read it twice and I was still confused about that. So if you're listening, if you are out there in podcast land listening in, send lots of emails to TJ and Chris and let them know the answer to that question.
Please explain it.
You can write us on Twitter.
Yes, we would love somebody to explain this. If Grant Morrison is listening, like if that amazing thing has happened, Grant Morrison, what the hell? What's going on?
All right, and how many batarangs would you guys give this? 1 out of 5.
I feel so bad. I really want people who are listening to this podcast to know that I do love Batman, and I do recognize that I've given the same rating to the ones we've read so far, but 2. It's a 2 batarang read for me. I didn't like it. I will never return to it. It was interesting, but I promise you all, next time we're actually reading one I like. I promise. They exist. We're gonna get to them.
I think I would give this one 3 batarangs, right in the middle, because the art is fascinating. The story tries real hard.
It tries so hard.
It tries so hard. And it raises some very interesting questions for me. It does give me a lot to think about. So as far as giving me something to like consider, it did pretty good. But
Yeah.
being able to follow the story and like being an enjoyable read, not so much. So I was vacillating between 2 and 3.5.
Yeah.
I was going back and forth between 3 and 4, so I'm going to go in the middle and give it a 3.5.
All right.
I'm going to break a batarang right in half just so it can have a half.
Yes. I love it. So, Alicia, usually we ask the people who come on what their ideal Batman story would be. Do you have an idea what yours would be if you could tell a story?
I think my ideal Batman story, I told you I love cozy mysteries.
Yes.
So my ideal Batman story, of course, involves a train and a killer and him having to solve the crime and like figure out who. I like a good old-fashioned whodunit, but it'd be a whodunit with superheroes.
I love that.
I want to read that.
I do too.
That is amazing. There is
you guys should write that.
You should write it, please.
No, I said you guys should write it.
So if only you had a husband that writes comic books.
Oh my gosh, if only.
If only.
Alicia, where can our listeners find you on social media? And do you have any like projects you're working on that you would want them to be aware about?
You can, first of all, find me at Alicia Whitley on Twitter. It is a very boring Twitter page.
It is not.
I mostly talk about school and and teaching.
It's extremely fun. Do not let her say otherwise.
Let's see. Anything that I'm working on, well, right now, trying to teach online has kind of put everything else on the back burner. So trying to rewrite all of these lesson plans and teach online and talk to other teachers, like proselytize to other teachers about using comics in the classroom and stuff like that. Has kind of made my creative endeavors fall off a little bit. So, all right, y'all, have a great night.
You too.
And
Thank
I will
you for
holler
coming
at you
on.
later.
Please do.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gotham Outsiders. Next time, we're going to have special guest Grant Morrison, award-winning podcaster, writer, and friend of mine on Twitter that loves to talk to me about whether Harley Quinn is a top or a bottom. Please tune in for that amazing episode where we'll be talking to him about
Rise of the Batman, and it is so good. It's like 8 issues of just pure awesome. It was one of the first volumes I read in the last 2 years when I started to really try to get into the comics, and it almost made me cry. So I'm so excited to talk about it.
I'm excited to talk about a volume that falls on the opposite end of my toxic masculinity scale because, of course, James Tian is the other anchor on that scale for me. So I am ready to talk about one that I know I like, that I won't have to rate 2 batarangs again for a change, with someone who's awesome and excited to join us on the show. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gotham Outsiders. You can find me, Chris, at The Myth of Psyche on Twitter. You can find me talking about psychology, feminism, queerness, and pretty frequently Batman. And you can find my co-host TJ at
Troyfin2 on Twitter, where I talk about all things book related and occasionally Batman related.
And you can find us both talking about Batman at our podcast official Twitter at Gotham Outsiders. You can also find us on Instagram at Gotham Outsiders. So please come back for that, and we will see you next time, the same bat time, same bat place. As we are a feminist podcast, we're not going to promo your husband on this show because you are amazing on your own and you don't need him.
But I do like him. I don't need him though.
Yeah, you don't need him, but we also do like him.